Well organized,
Thank you.
very well organized.
Thank you so much. So let's continue. So some of you wanted the PPTs. So what we will be doing is we'll be giving you all the PPTs as we finish. Some of the concepts, because we are doing a 2.5. So the general format is full 5 days continuous in person. So we break that down to fit it into these 2.5 hour format. So some of the topics spill over and we don't want to cut it short or anything. So once that topic gets over, topic wise, you will get your PPTs. So that's how we work. And so don't worry, you will get it.
But Ganda, yeah, supposing we miss out on a turn for some reason or the other, so then how do you expect us to catch up the next day if we don't go through the previous day's PPT?
So more than the PPT, if you can look at the video, because we don't put everything on the PPT. We only have certain just like points wise things on the PPT. So it's better to see the video. But if it's not possible, if one of you misses, we'll try and send you whatever is completed. Till then, we can send you the PPT. So if you all want it, you all can just request if it's not sent to you. The video takes about a little bit of time. So it's sent the next morning because by the time it downloads, it takes time. So
Yeah.
as soon as we get it, we share the link with you. But PPTs, it's only this, because if I send you the whole thing, otherwise it will be broken. And if I send you the whole thing, you will read it before the class and it won't be any fun. So that's the challenge. So if you fix it, then we can send you up to the slide that we have finished on that day.
Hmm.
Okay.
Then where would we find the video?
What is that?
Where would we find the video?
The video is shared by email with a link. If you click on the link, you can see the video. I think it's a YouTube link. So it's uploaded onto YouTube and you find it. You can watch it till the 30th of January. So if you want to watch it again, it's available till the 30th of January. In case anybody is requests for an extension, we can give it to that. Otherwise, it's generally put down exactly a month after we finish the course.
30th of January. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So we keep it for a month. So if anybody has missed something or want to go back to a particular topic, you can go back. And but by 30th, then we put it down.
All right.
So yesterday we looked at beliefs, core beliefs relating to conflict, and how that affects how we perceive conflict and in turn how we deal with it. But before that, before we go on to the other aspects, I want to understand from you. There are many words we use when we have disagreements or when we have issues with each other. We use words such as disagreement, problem, dispute, conflict, war. Is it all the same thing or is it different? So here is the graph which represents how mediators or people who deal with conflict look at various what we call as stages of conflict. We start off with differences. Differences could be internal. They may not even be expressed. So if you come in a situation and you are uncomfortable with what's going on with somebody, if certain decision is being taken, you are uncomfortable, but you do nothing about it, you don't express it, there is a difference. It's not expressed, it's just there, but there's something inside you that is shifted. The next stage is where you express it and you say, I don't agree with what you are saying. So there's a disagreement. The third stage is when the other person refuses to look at your perspective and there is a grievance or a problem. Once this is made public, it goes to, there is either some action taken on this grievance or problem, it becomes a dispute. So almost all the cases that reach courts are called disputes. So when we have an arbitration or we have a case or we have a case that we file, all of that is referred to disputes. Disputes are generally short-term or rather arising out of an event and can be placed back to that event. So there is there are facts, there are positions, and it's very clear about where it's come from and what is the reason behind it and who is in dispute, and it's expressed in the public. The next stage is conflict. Conflict is more long-term. It can be a dispute. It can be bigger than the dispute, but it's generally something that's long-term. And it's aggravated. Conflict can lead to violence, and conflict can also lead to war. You take any long-term conflict, you take the Israel-Palestine issue, for example, you can't go back and pinpoint to the cause of action. You'll have several because it has layers and layers of things that have happened. So it's become a conflict. Whereas you take a case where there is encroachment of property, somebody has come and encroached and that person has gone and filed a case in the court. It is related to that small area of work, facts, and you can clearly see where that, the facts are and what's the evidence. You can go back to the title and things like that. So there's a little gray area in terms of how we use these words. We say dispute resolution, we say conflict resolution. But as somebody who's getting into this, very serious business of resolving disputes and conflicts, one needs to understand what they are. And why you need to understand that is because whether you go for mediation or not, what method you choose, whether you want to go for arbitration, you want to file a suit, you want to go for mediation, all of that depends on where you lie on this ladder. Certain things which have escalated to the level of violence should not be mediated. May not be such a good idea to mediate. You cannot reason with somebody who has already gone to the level of violence. So when to mediate, of course, we are going to have a separate session after we finish all of this to address that. But when to mediate is a decision that parties have to take, lawyers have to take, and mediators have to guide. And understanding how conflict escalates, at what stage it is okay to intervene through a a method where you don't have authority involved, you don't have somebody to diffuse the conflict involved, then at what stage is it safe to to intervene. One needs to understand that where there is violence and where there is, of course, war has already taken place, mediation may not be a very successful attempt. A dispute is a short-term disagreement that can result in the disputants reaching some sort of resolution. It involves issues that are negotiable. Conflict, on the other hand, is seen as long-term with deeply rooted issues that are perceived as non-negotiable. So when you analyze a particular transaction, one needs to look at it, and also the word used is perceived. So it's not that, if something seems to be non-negotiable, doesn't mean that it is non-negotiable. But in general, there are certain matters in which one should not attempt to negotiate. And one key factor is violence. You have to first diffuse the violence, first bring the parties to a state where they are in a position to talk and listen, and only then can there be a reasonable discussion that can be held. So if you see, we call this the tension continuum, where you have differences, disagreement, problem, dispute, conflict. And differences can turn into disputes or conflicts if neither side is able to find a solution quickly. And when it becomes a dispute, you need a third party to resolve it. This third party could be anybody, but if it is a person with inclination, with training and experience, then that person would help mediate the disagreement into a resolution. So generally, our intervention is at the level of dispute and not at the level of conflict. Most issues that we come across in our day-to-day work life come under the category of dispute. They are negotiable. You can track back to what was the cause, and therefore that's possible to be negotiated. But sometimes it escalates for whatever reason, and we need to be careful. So what is mediation? Mediation is an art of building dialogue, engaging with the disputing parties in a neutral and impartial manner that builds trust, and creating an atmosphere where disputing parties feel empowered to communicate. Understand one thing, that whenever there is a conflict, whenever there's a dispute, it reaches a point where parties cannot speak to each other. That is why a third party is needed. And if you have an issue with somebody which has reached a level where you feel that dispute has happened, everything you speak, it does not mean, when I'm saying cannot speak to each other, doesn't mean that they are giving each other the silent treatment. What it means is that everything I say will be perceived as something else. There will be a reaction, and the discussion will escalate to a level where it's not possible to be heard and to have a reasonable negotiation. That is the time we bring in a third party to help diffuse that tension and try and have a dialogue. What we are learning is how to do that how to diffuse the tension, how to establish communication, and then eventually negotiate. Remember that in mediation, it's the parties who negotiate with each other. You don't negotiate for them. So you are not like a middleman. You have a specific job. You are a facilitator. You help them talk to each other. If you are actually carrying the messages from one person to another, you are not doing your job properly. Your job is to establish communication between them. So you have to be neutral. They have to trust you. You have to be impartial so that they feel that they are heard, not just by you, by the other person also. So that's the environment that you create for them to feel heard, for them, both of them to be able to say what they want to say and be heard. There are techniques we use to diffuse the emotion that's there in the statements that they make so that you can neutralize the charge, the emotional charge that's being carried by the statements, by the blame, by the very things that make it difficult for them to communicate with each other. And that is our job, to create that atmosphere where disputing parties feel empowered to communicate. So I'm using the word empowered, and I want you to tell me, when do you feel empowered?
When you are in complete knowledge of the things.
Yeah.
Yes. Very good. When you have the knowledge.
When you feel that your point of view is being considered very seriously and it would affect the decisions that are being made, rather than getting the feeling that you are just being heard for the heck of it.
Yes. Yes. That you're being taken seriously, that you matter. Okay. So what happens when you go to court? And I keep making this comparison because that's a very easy way to understand. Supposing you have a dispute and you choose to go to court.
There is a lot of third party interference, as in you need to be first speaking to your lawyer, then your lawyer needs to understand what you have to say, then the lawyer has to put it in the words and you should agree with the words that the lawyer is using, because a lot of times what we say and what the lawyer says about us are two different things altogether, and they don't make sense at all. And in the court case, you don't get to talk at all. The lawyer talks on your behalf, and whatever the lawyer says is what you say.
So
Yes.
basically, you are powerless.
You are
Yes.
Powerless.
you are kind of giving your power to someone else, not
Yeah, you
just
feel
the lawyer.
powerless. Yeah.
Yes, and also the judge, because eventually it's that person and his perception of the truth that's going to be that's going to take a that's going to be the final decision. So you are actually not having the power. Here the power is with the parties, because eventually not only they give, they are able to express themselves and put it out there in terms of what they feel. So they are the people who are, in control of the process, but they're also in control of the eventual outcome. And that is empowering. So that's why we refer to mediation as empowering, primarily from the perspective of how a party feels when they're in the process.
But at times they are at crossroad, and how do you make them see? How do you make them sit on a one table or one meeting? That is the wherever we have seen any dispute is there, वो अपने ऑफिस में, वो अपने ऑफिस में,
Yes,
दोनों एक साथ मिलना भी नहीं चाहते हैं.
correct. That's
This
always
is
the case.
that
So-
always the case. And I had one big dispute among big companies for money recovery. So ultimately, creditor said that I will not go to his office also because I have gone to
Yes.
2 years. I have regularly gone. If he wants to come settlement, the bigger party said I will not come to his office. Ultimately, we met at Starbucks and cleared the matter. So it
Yes.
was so issue that now I will not go to his office.
Yes. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, we had a similar, exactly the facts that you are describing, that one of the creditors refused to go to the office of the other person, saying that they have insulted me. And he had a lot of complaints, similar. And he said, I have this amount that has to be this thing, but he's telling me to come to his office and, talk to him. I'm not going to his office. I've been insulted there. I'm just not going there. And the matter got resolved within an hour when they came to the mediator. So this is very common. When there's a third party and you know that the third party is neutral, this could be an institution, this could be an individual. Neutrality really plays a role, that you have nothing to do, you have no interest in either of the parties or the dispute at hand. You are only somebody who is a professional who does this work as a profession. It's a service. People trust you and they are willing to then come to your office or your screen and resolve the issue.
Here you keep referring to as some institution. See, institution role is still the appointment now. Once you are appointed, you are individual. No?
Yes, whichever way. Whichever way.
How the institute comes into
Because
say
the institute invites them. So
it should
what?
invite them, but then there the matter ends. No?
No, it doesn't end. All the meetings are held in the institute's office. So again, the space is neutral. What happens with an individual, and I'll tell you why I keep insisting, because I have found that if, supposing I'm a company and I appoint you as a mediator, the other party will say, I don't want him because he's known to them.
Okay. But suppose institute appoint you as a mediator. Now you need not be at the same this our institute premises. It can be at XYZ, it can be at IMC, or it can be at any other meeting hall, or it is compulsory to be at our institute only, or how it is.
It's not compulsory, but the approach is that if it is a third party and the third party is not related, it's not chosen by just one person, it is easier to accept.
Correct, but I'm saying
That's all.
institute is an appointing agency. Thereafter, whether any role of institute is there or not.
It is there. So basically all the paperwork is handled by the institute. The agreement is made by the institute. It's as per the institute's rules. So all of that is taken care by the institute. The executability. So all these questions of, how to write the agreement is basically, you are helped by the institute to draft it, to get it signed. All that support is provided by the institute. So as a mediator, you only work, you do your job, and all the paperwork, all the calling up, all the administrative work, all of that is handled by the institute. So it does not mean that you have to go only to the institute, but sometimes to build trust, that also helps. Yes, Dr. Rai.
In what cases there are two mediators?
So that's the concept called co-mediation. Generally, co-mediation is done by mediators who are very comfortable with each other. It's not like arbitrators. I'm sorry, I have no idea from where these come. But there are generally, if it is two mediators, they have to be able to talk to each other and basically coordinate with each other and discuss their strategy together. It rarely happens that parties, one party appoints one mediator, another party appoints another mediator. That is not how it happens. it's a team of mediators that can be appointed if it is a case that involves a lot of parties, or it's very complex, it's going to go on for a longer time, has multiple layers. You can have two mediators, and the concept is called co-mediation.
Okay, but in institutional, you don't have two mediators.
You can, if there are
You can.
times that we do have two mediators. Their roles are defined between them, so we will look at that during the role play. So there is a division of work. Someone is good. One typical case is if you have a lawyer and you have a non-lawyer. So basically, supposing you have an industry expert, you have an architect, you have an engineer, you have a doctor, that's an industry expert. And it's a case that relates to a particular industry. So you have that person, but that person may or may not be well-versed with the law or well-versed with the process. That person comes in, he's a trained mediator, but he may not be as experienced as somebody who is a lawyer or a mediator who's been mediating for a long time. And the mediator may not have the expertise of the industry. They work together.
Okay.
Particularly in disputes that patent disputes, those kind of disputes which require the technical knowledge. That time, and that is one of the reasons we are having a training like this, because medical disputes are the kind of disputes where there is that knowledge is important. Yes, Dr. Balsar.
Yeah. So these what the parties come to you of their own accord, or do you kind of like how for a case you have to issue a summons, right? So does the mediator have to issue a summon? What if one of them says that they don't want to come?
So
Then how do you
that
manage?
part, I'm going to park your question because we're having a whole session on
All
this.
right.
Okay, so it's a proper thing that you will understand how it goes through. There are agreements to be signed and all that. So we'll get to that. Vishwanath, you're on mute.
Sorry. Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Two questions I have. One, if I have an institute, mediation institute, is it mandatory to have written procedures with me, how I deal with the mediation? And if so, who is the regulator? Who regulates this written procedure? Because I can't, if I am given a freedom, I can have my own procedure, which may not be in sync with the law of land. So who regulates this?
So first of all, I'm talking only about mediation. Mediation is a flexible process. But for matters to be executable, there are certain laws. Every institute, when they draft their own rules, they will be mainly related to selection of mediators, how to empanel mediators, how to file a case, those kind of things. Now, those are not really regulated. Other than now, the Mediation Act is still forming its rules. Once we have the rules, we will know if there are regulations related to that. But basically, those are not regulated. Those things which are regulated, obviously, they are checked and they have to be in line with the law of the land. If they do something that's not in line with the law of the land, they will not be accepted. So those are drafted by the institute. And yes, all institutes have their own rules.
One more question in that.
Yes.
Suppose the mediation, now that you have two types of mediation. One is court referred mediation and other is the party referred, the party approached mediation. So if there isn't a party approached mediation and I am not regulated my procedures, do I have enough freedom to give a decision on my own, or it is regulated?
Okay, so first thing is we don't give decisions. We are mediators. Secondly, this is going to be covered in another session, so I don't want to confuse. The participants here do not even know that there are two types of mediation. So let's wait. Let's come to that point, and then we'll take it.
Sure.
Because it's just jumping it a little fast.
Madam, if I'm registered with one institute, I can also register with other institute also?
Yes.
Or
Yes, you are free to register as long as you have the requirements, what that institute requires. So generally it is, number of years of experience as a professional and a 40-hour course. And
Now, if I do the course here, and tomorrow, suppose if I want to register at other institute, whether that this
generally it is accepted. Generally it is, I mean, we know us, people getting accepted in the High Court, and so it's accepted.
okay.
So these are the 4 pillars of mediation. Mediation is voluntary. It is, the parties have a right to self-determination. It is confidential. And the mediator is a neutral person. What does it mean that the parties are, what does it mean that mediation is voluntary? You cannot impose mediation on anyone. You cannot make mediation mandatory. Of course, the question will come up that there is mandatory mediation that is there in the courts. The Mediation Act has removed the mandatory mediation clause. Parties choose mediation. So if I agree to mediation, only then there can be mediation. I can't be forced into it. The second element of that, I can exit mediation at any point in time. So if I feel that the mediator is not neutral, I feel that this is not giving me what I want, I feel it's a waste of time, I feel the parties are, the opposite party is manipulating me, or I would get a better result in court, I am free to exit at any point in time. I cannot be forced to continue with the process. I cannot be forced to accept the decision that, the agreement that both of us may come to, or the proposals that are shared with me. It's completely voluntary. I have to come there with my free will. I leave with my free will, and I agree to an outcome out of my free will. So that's principle number 1. Principle number 2 is self-determination. Parties choose the outcome. What we are learning here is a process called mediation, which is also, there are categories of mediation, and we are learning something called facilitative mediation, where the mediator is a facilitator. At no point is the mediator supposed to influence the parties that, this is good for you, you should do this, this is the best thing for you. The mediator is supposed to understand from the parties and explore with the parties whether something is good for them or not, or whether they feel it is good for them or not. Okay. The parties design their solution, and only if they are completely satisfied, they accept it and sign it off. Till they sign off, in the sense there is a written agreement between the parties, there is no binding. So you go to mediation. In fact, even the fact that you have mediated is confidential. What happened in the mediation is confidential. And maintaining that free will of the parties is the most important thing for a mediator, to maintain this principle of self-determination, to give that power back to the person who is deciding, who's actually in the conflict, who's actually in trouble. The third principle is that it is a confidential process. You sign an agreement and you discuss the matter with a third party neutral. The third party neutral cannot be called as a witness in court. He is not supposed to keep any records. If he keeps records, he's supposed to destroy them. There is no record as such of the process, because you are not required to disclose what happened in the process. So, and there are steps in the mediation process where you also have discussions with the parties without the other party being present. Unlike in an arbitration or in a lawsuit, you have something that we call caucus or a private session. Whatever is discussed in the private session cannot be shared with the other party without express permission from the party with whom you are having the caucus. In fact, if you were to take the most important thing that is there in mediation is the confidentiality. So matters where reputation is involved, matters where secrets are involved, trade secrets are involved, financial matters are involved, which is something you don't want to disclose. Mediation is a very good option because the level of confidentiality that is kept is very high. And the fourth principle is neutrality. Mediator is a facilitator and not a judge. So, in fact, one of the things that takes the longest time for us as mediators is to actually not judge, because by nature, we all have learned to come to conclusions, to judge, to kind of solve issues. We think we have enough experience to be able to understand what's going on in this situation, judge and solve the problem. We feel we have answers. In fact, we lawyers are the worst of the lot and the most difficult to become mediators, because we are used to giving advice right from the beginning. We don't always listen. We listen to, selectively. We want to listen to the parts that fall under certain categories in the law. We want to give solutions that fit in the law. And that's how we are taught to think. When you become a neutral, you are not supposed to use that skill at all. You're supposed to be open, understand, and ask that person what they want. That becomes very difficult. But during the process of this course and with practice, that's what we learn to be. And eventually, it's a good quality to have in every walk of life.
Then what is your role exactly? Suppose if you are not going to speak or give a direction or anything, or ye kar lo, your option or something, then what is?
So it's a role of a facilitator. We will be doing some role plays. I'm also going to go through the whole process with you tomorrow. And each of the steps in the process will give you a lot of clarity as to what to do and why to do. Most important is why. So we'll go through it step by step. The role is that of a facilitator. Your job is to help the parties understand what they want, not what they think they want. So that
sounds more like a psychotherapist.
No, we don't do psychotherapy at all.
Sounds like.
Yes, it does. In fact, there is a little bit of overlap in terms of the of this facilitative role, and we get this question a lot between the counselor and the mediator. But we don't get into counseling. We in fact don't use many of the techniques that counselors use. We are facilitators. Also remember that we deal with issues that are negotiable. Counselors deal with healing. They deal with internal issues. Yes, they do eventually sometimes deal with couple counseling and family counseling and relationship counseling. That may be a little more similar, but counselors deal a lot with healing. We are not healers. We don't do that. We are into more of reason, exploring, actually getting to the crux of the conflict. Not really understanding the individual as much, but understanding how the individual perceives the problem. And maybe getting a little shift there. There are techniques which we use and tools which we will share with you as the process.
So you keep on asking questions.
Yes.
So suppose A party says this thing happened. So then you keep on asking few questions to make it. So he may say his part of story which is good.
Yes.
So you will have to ask question by more questions, so that he comes out with a fact of the other side which is hiding.
Correct. So it's a lot more than that, which I don't want to go at right now, because you all have to get a overview. Then we go, and it's stepwise, because the step that you are talking about is literally almost in the third stage. So there is a way to do it, because unless people trust you, they're not going to tell you. If they're hiding something and they know that can be used against them, or they have been wrong somewhere, they are not going to disclose it to you unless they really believe that you can help them, or that it's worth telling you. Sometimes people may never tell you, but we have experienced that people disclose a lot of things that they wouldn't disclose in front of an arbitrator or in front of a judge. But it doesn't happen right in the beginning. It takes a few sessions, or it takes the process to go a little ahead. Commercial disputes are very different, but disputes the kind that involve emotion and relationships, those tend to get a little more complex. Large disputes between corporates also tend to get a little more complex. Smaller disputes don't have so many layers, so they are resolved much quicker, like recovery or very specific contractual matters. Then there are not so many layers. But like you're saying, if there's some fact that's being hidden or something like that, it takes a little time to go through those layers.
And if the party is not comfortable with disclosing before the other party, you have a solo meeting or
Yes. We have something called a private session. In fact, that's a critical part of the process. You can have multiple private sessions. The idea is for you to understand the perception, for you to understand where that person is coming from, what is his challenge in terms of the conflict. And sometimes both parties have it. And they are not able to tell each other that on their face because of various things. I can give you one example. It's a commercial case that we had where one party had cancelled a very large order from another party, and the matter got really complicated in terms of several $1 million dispute, and it came to mediation. When it came there, what was not disclosed, and which eventually was disclosed during the proceeding, was the fact that the product for which this was being bought had a manufacturing defect, had some issue which they could not disclose in the market. And they could not disclose it to the other side because that would just spread out. It was extremely confidential, known only to one or two directors and basically a very small team in that very large company. And the other party was looking for a solution, but they were not understanding why these people are not paying, despite paying and not picking up the order, because paying is one part of it, but there was an order that went on for 5 years, which would mean contracts that were signed with suppliers which would support that. So they would be in breach of those contracts for 5 years. So the effect that every contract has, you sign a contract and then you sign multiple contracts to be able to fulfill that contract. If this is breached, all of those you are breaching because you have signed those contracts. So there was this effect that was happening, that all of them were getting breached. When that fact was disclosed, that fact was never told to the other side. But we found a solution which could actually solve the problem for both of them. Parties themselves found it without disclosing this fact. Now, this could not happen in a negotiation because there was just no acceptance. It's like you don't feel that the person is coming in good faith if they're not telling you the whole story. But when there's a mediator in between, we are able to do that without actually by building the trust between both the parties. So that's something that we typically do, and one of the cases that I was personally involved in, and it was successful. Any other questions here? Now let's look at this scenario. A new CEO takes over a company. Let us call her Indira. She makes a policy decision to have a strict 8-hour work day with mandatory punch in at 8 a.m. and punch out at 4:30 p.m. Here are some reactions to the policy. Peter, a senior employee, unhappy about the decision, approaches Indira to discuss. Indira explains to him her reasons. Peter thinks about the reasons and decides to support Indira in implementing the policy. Is there a dispute here or not?
No.
Okay. Anyone thinks otherwise?
Madam, there was a dispute definitely where they were able to sort out the differences. It was a conflict, maybe it did not escalate to the dispute level, but he chose the path of discussing things instead of keeping it to himself and then brooding about it and then spreading negativity all around. So he directly approached her and he asked her, "Why are you doing this?" She told him and he agreed to it. So fine. So there was definitely a conflict, may not be a dispute though.
So there was a difference. Conflict.
Yeah,
is,
there was a difference. Sorry, there was a difference.
There was a difference. Okay, it's fine. So there was
That,
what you see here.
the senior must have accepted it, but he might not be willing to.
Possible.
Yeah, if the boss tells I have no option, but नहीं ऐसा ही करने का है तो he has thought it to better अभी why should I create an unpleasant atmosphere, or I have to be always in a good book with my senior. No, so he
Correct.
might have accepted it, but by heart he might have not liked it. Yeah.
Correct. So basically, it's somewhere between difference and disagreement. It's
Yeah.
not gone to the next level. There's no problem because he's not creating any issue there. He is accepting. So there's no problem. That's what we think if you look at the ladder. Okay. Now there's another reaction. Peter writes an email to Indira refusing to abide by the policy, claiming he's a senior employee, has been associated with the company for almost 2 decades, and that he should be exempted from this rule. Indira insists that she cannot make any exceptions and Peter should cooperate. Peter abides but is not happy.
This
Is
what
there
I
a
said last time.
Yes, this is exactly what you said.
But it's not a conflict, no? It's a grievance.
It's a grievance.
He has not made it public to call it a conflict.
Yes, he's not made it public, and he's not really, he's written about it. So he's expressed his disagreement. She has said, no, I mean, I know you have a disagreement, but we cannot make any changes.
Exception.
Yeah, we cannot make any changes to the policy. You have to abide by it. So he is not happy. So there's a little bit some point where there's a pain point, but it's not full blown. It's not gone to the stage of a dispute or anything. Okay, but he is not happy. So note that. Third reaction. Peter is unhappy about the new policy and discusses the same with a group of colleagues during lunch. Out of the 10 people at the table, 7 agree that the new rule is unfair. 2 colleagues seem to be happy about the rule, and 1 is indifferent. Is there a conflict?
Not really.
Starting to.
Still at that difference,
Grievance.
grievance. But remember now, it is between, it's not one person against the other. Now it's a group. It's become bigger from that point of view. Yes, Mrinalini?
Yeah, I'm so sorry to like interrupt in the middle. So I just had a small question. When we tell that the particular disagreement or the difference is to be made public for it to become a conflict, do we mean, is it essential that it's just the number of people that we're talking about, or is it that the
Other.
to each other, right? So it should be made public so that the other person who I have a
So,
disagreement
no,
with
so it's not
knows,
made public is dispute.
right? Okay, got it.
A difference and disagreement, there is expressing it. So
Okay.
difference can be internal, where I differ from their view. Moment I express my view, it becomes a disagreement. Once it's expressed, and then if I express it and it's immediately accepted, there is no difference. It's done.
Right.
But when I express it and there is still a difference between the two, there's a disagreement. Okay, and there's a disagreement and there's a decision that continues that issue, it becomes a problem or a grievance.
Got it. Thank you so much.
So, okay, so this has become it's brewing now. Reaction 4. Peter, along with a large group of employees, come together and decide to object to the new policy. They make a written representation to the company that the new rule should be withdrawn. Is there a conflict?
There is no conflict yet
No, it's still a grievance.
It's a
because
grievance.
the other party is yet to react.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. Now, Indira receives 2 representations, one for the rule and one against. Both groups state a variety of reasons and threaten various actions if their demands are not met. At what level is this? At this time, Peter decides. Okay, so this is the first part. Answer the first question.
Various threatens. Threat means it's bordering on violence. So, I mean, suddenly it has jumped from a grievance
Yes.
to violence?
Suddenly it's jumped from a grievance to a dispute. Because violence has not happened as yet.
But there is a threat, right?
Threat of various actions, need not
Okay.
be violence. I mean, it can be that we will go on a strike, we will not abide by this policy, we will still continue to swipe in at 10 o'clock, whatever. So those could be actions, various actions.
But he's on the verge of action.
It's on the verge of action. Not all action is violence. So here, there's a dispute. Okay. Now, look at this next point. At this time, Peter decides that he is happy with the new policy. How does that change the dynamic?
There is no dispute at all. There is no
Are you
dispute.
sure? Are you sure, Mr.
No.
Madam, he has created a conflict, and now he is getting out of it.
Yeah.
That is
He's
actually
getting out of
escalating.
it, but the conflict is on.
Yeah, conflict is
Conflict
definitely
is
on.
on.
Because now it's not
Because
about
the group of
yes, it's now a lot of people who are involved. It will take its own journey now. It's not related. In fact, in all probability, when you look at various actions and reasons and all of that, a lot of things have come up which may not even be related to the policy at all. You know, when things like this happen, it just escalates. And what if Indira withdraws the policy? Because there are people who are happy with the policy. Can it go back? So this is what happens in conflict. sometimes it keeps escalating, and unless you know when to de-escalate it and when to address it, there's a point where it becomes really difficult to control it. Of course, in a matter like this, even at this stage, mediation can be used. That's it's just a, just to give you an idea how things can escalate and how they grow. Yes, Dr. Balsara.
Yeah, so I don't get this, to call it a dispute or conflict, it needs to be made, does it need to be involving a lot of people?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. This is just an example. A conflict
Okay.
can be between two people, but it's long term. And it will have issues that are very much deeper. So like in a case like this, it'll have a lot of issues which will be brought up, which will not be related to the policy even.
Okay,
Because
so sorry, yeah. When did it change from a grievance to a dispute? At what point?
from a grievance to a dispute is here.
In this case, acha, all these.
Where two groups of people wrote two different letters.
Okay.
Indira receives two representations. That is when it became a dispute. Because it was no longer between the management and the employees. It actually, in fact, even when it was between management and there was a dispute, but it was still smaller because the management could just withdraw the dispute. It became bigger when there were two parties and both wanted two opposite things, and management kind of got, is in the middle of it. To find a solution, you'll have to disturb one of the parties.
And it became a conflict when
Yes.
when they threatened actions.
It became a conflict when it became more complex.
Okay.
And it had multiple layers. It's not now related to just the point of swiping in and swiping out. It would have multiple layers. When there are groups and representations and threatening actions, there would be other issues that would be there, and it becomes more complex. So that's when it is a conflict. It is longer, and the conflict actually lives beyond the dispute. So even if you remove the dispute out of the question, the conflict continues.
So the scenario that you have given us still has not reached the stage of conflict. It's still because
Yes,
it's
you
still,
can say that. You can, at this stage, you can still intervene and resolve it. But basically, just to explain that matters can escalate, and sometimes when they escalate, the people who actually were involved may not have control. Yes, Vishwanath.
If I go back to a definition of conflict, there are three things to happen. One is you have a difference of opinion, and then you have to express the difference of opinion. Then there should be a reason where the other party is interfering with the goals of other party. Suppose you have a goal and other guy has got a different goal, so you are interfering, pursuing your goals.
Correct.
In this case, when I take the interference is started when the Peter objected, because he wrote an email. And
Okay, so one minute. Vishwanath, you are going back to the original definition of conflict. That definition stands. We have now broken it down over a ladder. We are trying to see how it escalates and reaches to that point. There's another definition that we've given. So let's try and understand the escalation rather than going back to the first definition of conflict. It is correct that definition applies here, but let's not go back to that, because if you take that definition, the conflict is there throughout the scenario. But then we broke it down to difference, disagreement, and we broke it down over levels. It is conflict, but it's broken down over levels. Okay, and that is being done so that
stages of the conflict.
Yes, the stages of the conflict, so that we understand at what stage intervention is possible, at what stage it's not possible for us as mediators.
To understand it, there wasn't a conflict, but conflict are, I mean, mutual, sorted out with the mutual consent, that is not escalated. So now the stages you are talking about, your question was whether the conflict is there or not there. So obviously there is a conflict, because as per the definition, there is a conflict.
I'll want you to hold that question. I think, I think what we were looking for is that escalation. So that is, we've got there. I can't keep discussing this point here. There was a difference right in the beginning. Okay, there has been a difference. It's not that there was nothing. There has been a difference from point 1. There was, after that, every point there was an escalation. So that is the way we have done this exercise. So what you're saying is correct. It's just that we are using different words for the same thing. Okay. So after having looked at this, where do you think conflict begins?
It actually starts when there are two parties and when they have two opinions about the given situation. It will start whether you want to put it in words or you don't want to put it in words.
Okay, so
A difference of
it
opinion.
starts with both the parties, or it starts with one of the parties?
Starts with both, because both are actually giving their opinions, which may not be the same, no?
But in the first scenario, the other party was not involved. I mean, basically, there was a decision. Some people had an issue, some people did not. So how does that work?
It created the difference, you know, the people who were for it and were not for it, because they were put into a situation.
In the beginning only one person had an issue.
So that person had an opinion. So there was this idea of punching in on time and going out on time. Okay, and then somebody there was a rule already. So that was a policy of the company. But then somebody wanted to very strictly implement that. Now there might have many, so that was not being implemented as strictly as it should have been. And this lady came in saying that now we should do it. So there were people who were taking advantage of this policy. There were people who were taking the disadvantage of this non-implementation also. So there was already an issue of people not punching in on time, no?
Okay.
That's one.
Thank you, Dr. Deepa. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it just starts with something that has changed. So a particular, something is going along a particular line and something has changed. So that change can basically come from any factor. I mean, in this case, it turned out to be the Indira who made the change, but there's something which is going along a particular line and something or someone changes it, and there is some issue that comes up with the people who are concerned with that particular happenings. So they start giving their own views or opinions, and may lead to starting with a difference and then leading on to the ladder.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So you're saying that if there's a change and that change is uncomfortable, that causes a conflict. Starts there. Yes, Dr. Balsara.
So basically, it was a difference of opinion between the policy maker and the senior employee, basically.
Yes.
That is what was the beginning of the conflict, a difference of opinion.
So where is the opinion? How does the opinion form?
She wanted a particular time frame, and he, being a senior, was like kind of his ego problems, that I don't want to do it. Why should I? That kind. So it all begins in the mind. Ego, I think.
Okay, so
could I say something?
Yes. Who said?
Actually, in a company like this, now, anytime before if it is implemented, it is discussed at the senior level and then implemented.
So,
This
okay,
has been
don't take all the examples in practicality like that. Let's understand the concepts, because many of these I have made up. So it's not necessary. Some of them are made up where all the facts are removed. And obviously, when by the time it comes to you, they've gone through stages. So we won't get into what happens practically, because we will get to that when we look at a later stage, when we start looking at actual problems. Now we are only understanding a few concepts.
okay. Okay, fine.
Let's stick to that. Okay. So would all of you, first of all, let's understand what the mind means here. What do you feel the mind is?
Ego.
Okay. I have a issue with that. But anyways.
Mind is a thinking tool. You start thinking.
Okay. I'm not using the word brain. I'm using the word mind. So, anyone else?
It's basically a sum of everything that you have been exposed to, the social, your upbringing, your values, your thoughts, your education. I think everything boils down to.
Yes. So the mind is a term that is used for the cognitive faculties that allow a person to think, to reason, perceive, have a will, have ideas, and have emotion. So it's a combination of all of these. Our emotions also are part of the mind. How we see the world is is all part of the faculty of what we term as a mind. It's not just intellect. It's intellect plus experience plus emotion plus. So it's a multiple, it's a whole lot of things. And how each person experiences something in their mind, an event, like somebody said, it's a change, and how each mind perceives the change is different. That is why conflict arises. That is one of the reasons, because what may be completely okay for somebody to come in and swipe at 8:30, for another person that will be extremely uncomfortable because they want to sit up all night and do something else, and they want to have a late morning. Or somebody has to drop their kids in the morning to college or school and then go back home. Multiple factors, and all of this is handled by the faculty which we name as mind. So from difference to conflict, it begins in the mind. It is always a product of the mind, and it will also end when it is resolved in the mind. So for me, for my conflict, for example, we had in this example that Peter was not happy. He agreed, but he was not happy because in his mind, the problem is not resolved. He's just agreed to it because, okay, I'm a part of this company. I have to abide by the rules, so I'm agreeing, but there is something that's not resolved. What is not resolved? It's that problem that came up in the mind. That opinion, that objection, that difference of, that difference between what I want and what the management wants. Okay. So having this idea of conflict is very important. This understanding of conflict is very important for us to be able to try and resolve it between people. Any questions so far? I know this is a hard, it's new and it's kind of complex, But as we go through this course, you will get to know why we look at conflict in this manner, and how we use techniques to be able to come to that point where we can actually resolve this conflict, help people resolve this conflict first in their mind and then with each other.
Then do you have to study the mind in detail?
No, not at all. That's not our work. We have to study the conflict in detail, not the individual as much. We have to understand the individual, but not really the faculty of the mind. But what are the factors that influence? What makes them want this? It's things like that, but not really. I know where you're coming from, Dr. Balsara. You are trying to understand whether you need a psychological understanding to be able to do that. But no, I'm a lawyer. I don't have, I'm not a psychologist. And I mean, the course and the techniques help me, work a lot. Yes, there are some issues where I feel that a little more understanding of psychology would help, but it's not mandatory, particularly in matters that, in fact, that challenge comes in all kinds of cases. Sometimes it's a highly technical case, and I wish I understood the words better. I wish somebody told me why a particular process is done in a particular manufacturing process or in a particular case. So those challenges come everywhere. You don't need a psychology background. It's not that kind of work. And I think you'll figure it once we go through the process. Some of us have interest and keep reading about human behavior a little bit, but it's more from the perspective of what questions to ask, or how to make them feel safer in a particular environment, those kind of things, how to build rapport, those kind of issues, not really trying to have a diagnosis. That's not what we do. Okay. I shared a document with all of you yesterday, which was basically a conflict survey in terms of your conflict style. I'm wondering if all of you had the time to kind of work on it. If you haven't, let's take a 10-minute break. You can complete it if you want to complete it during the break, and then continue.
I have not joined that WhatsApp group. I'm just trying to figure out.
I'll put it here. I'll put it in the chat here.
Okay.
Do you want me to add you, Dr. Sirur?
Yeah, if you can do.
Yes, I will.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. It's just that it's an option of the person to join, so we don't add them. So that we don't, like, some people don't like to get added to the group. So if you say so, I will add you.
You can add me.
Thank you. So let's start again at 8:22. Are we back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So let's start. So what causes conflict? Any idea? Any thoughts?
Basically, two people who don't think alike or
Okay.
you know, ride the waves together kind of thing. Some difference can be as basic as difference in ideology or difference in thinking or difference in the way they think something should be perceived or even solved.
Right.
Anything where two people are not matching.
Correct. That's correct. So disputes or conflicts are caused due to various factors. It could be information, it could be unmet needs and wants, expectations from each other, values, perceptions, knowledge, expectations, assumptions. Let's look at a few of them a little bit in detail. So first thing is information. Is information independent of narrative? We all have our own narratives about how we see things or how we interpret what we see, in terms of the information. Do you think information is just information? First of all, what is it? Let's get to that. What does information mean? Yes, Mrinalini.
Yeah, so I think I would say information cannot be independent of narrative. I know that in law we learn that facts are neutral and they're not, they're backed by evidence and everything. But I think by the innate feature of a human, you tend to bring in some sort of bias. I think even when we say we're neutral, I think it's also about being actively acknowledging the fact that we might have our own biases and our own opinions, but we choose to be neutral. So I think information in that sense cannot be independent of narrative, because the way that I see a fact can be different to how X or Y views the facts. So I think in that term, there is some sort of, maybe the degree of how much of bias and how much of narrative might differ, but it will be like inclusive of some narrative.
Okay, thank you. So narratives are a source of information. They depend on the value that is upheld by the source. They promote goal of the narrator. They have a huge impact on our cognition. They are part of history of every society, community, group, or nation. In mediation, one must always remain aware of the power of the narrative and learn to sift it. A mediator should not get drowned into the narrative. Okay?
You repeat the last sentence. The mediator should not get drowned into
Any narrative. In the sense, do not agree to, or rather immediately try and get influenced by the story of one person. Listen to the story, acknowledge the story, but also be aware that that story could be colored because of various things. That's that person's narrative.
yeah. Got it.
So basically, just
Tell me
listen.
what? Basically what?
basically just listen without making an opinion.
Basically just listen, and we understand that that's one way of looking at things. Perhaps that's not the only way, and it could be because of several factors. And try and understand more. Go with a perspective of curiosity. Go with that attitude that let me be curious about why he's saying this. What is he saying? What does it mean for him? Let's look at this picture and tell me what you feel about it. So this
This perception of a person, the perception of the person, because he has that horn, it is there in all the pictures. Otherwise, it's not there in the picture per se, but he sees that. So that is his viewpoint.
Yes. He sees what he just. Yes. Yes, Rushali.
It also can be different perspectives from different angles.
Yes, correct.
So basically, he's seeing different situations, but one thing is fixed.
Yes, he's seeing it's actually various times of the day. It's the same scene. It's the various times of the day. But one thing is constant, and he believes perhaps that is part of that scenery and not part of him. And many times we could have those kind of frames, as we call it, through which we see the world. We call them structural frames. We add them to our problems. These are frames of identity or rights or religion, or the frame of resources or power. The frame could also be of emotions. When you see something with anger, you see a different thing. And when you see something with love, you see it differently. Every emotion framed to the problem affects the problem. So it's what's through how do you see it? Do you see it? It's impossible for us to actually see things without having any frame, almost. So we always look at things because we have prior experience, we have knowledge, we have education. We look at things from that point of view. A lawyer looks at things in a particular manner, a doctor will look at it in a particular manner, a chartered accountant will look at it. Whereas somebody who doesn't have that frame may not see it in that manner. Who doesn't have your knowledge may not see it in that manner. As a mediator, we should allow emotions to be vented out and therefore after channelize the discussion towards solution. A mediator should always remain aware of the frame of the dispute and separate it while discussing the solutions to the dispute. How to do it is something that we'll look at during the course. Another prism that we look through is our values. Values are beliefs that drive all of our behavior. They are standards and principles that we use to judge behavior, actions, decisions, and opinions, both our own and that of others. People's values differ about time, money, health, relationships, morality, and politics. And we bring our value to a problem. So when we try to solve a problem, we see it through our value system. If somebody else we are dealing with doesn't have the same value system, there's going to be some form of difference or disagreement between the two. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. So now this is a little problem. There are no right or wrong answers, but I want to see what what you all feel. So the board of directors knows that the rare earth minerals they need for their electronic products are being mined by children. Not using that source means that the company is required to raise the price of its products considerably. That means competitors will win huge market share. Do you feel the BOD is correct in continuing to buy these rare minerals from these sources or not? It's a business decision. There are no right and wrong answers. I want you all to put it in the chat box whether you feel it is 1 or 2. And you don't have to be politically correct. Just go with what you feel as a business person. Mrinalini, just note down. So at the end, we just need the. Okay, let's go to the next one. The CEO of a large corporation has been informed that one of their products causes cancer in lab rats. The mortality rate is low, and the company has spent millions on research and development and marketing. Recalling the product would mean bankruptcy and thousands of lost jobs. What should he do? Recall the product? Do nothing. Do participate, even if you there are no right and wrong answers, and I'm not judging your morality. I'm just trying to see if what is the general opinion. This is another one. Anil has 2 close friends. One is considering buying a car from the other. They know the car has a serious problem with the engine, but his friend is not disclosing it. He and his friend who is selling the car know the problem. So what would Anil do? What should Anil do? Disclose to the facts to the buyer friend, or do nothing? Okay, Mrinalini, what are the results?
Okay, so for the first question, we got 6 responses, and it was 3 for 1, so 3 for the right thing that the board of directors did, and 3 for wrong in terms of what the board of directors did. For the second question, we got 8 for recalling the product, and we got 2 for doing nothing. And for the third question now, we got only 7 responses, and all the 7 responses say disclose the facts to the buyer pen.
So we have such a small group of people today. We have 15 people, but in these 15 people, we cannot agree on 3 issues, which are each one of us has an opinion. If I get into the details of the opinion, the reasons will be very different for each one of you. And there might even be a big conflict that comes up here when we start discussing about it. The bottom line is our values, our perception of the problem make us decide things in certain manner. If we go strictly by the law, there is right and there is wrong. But for each one of us, right and wrong is something unique. And when it comes to resolving conflict, it's very important that we understand this factor. That what may be moral to you, what may be right to you, may be wrong to me. And to be able to see it from the other person's perspective, from the perspective of the person you're talking to, is one of those qualities that we need to develop, to be able to be open to see that point of view and to understand that moral values will differ from person to person. Unmet needs and wants. So basically, we all have some needs, wants that need to be met as human beings. We need, we need company. As human beings, we need recognition, we need appreciation, we need to basically be seen, to be heard. All of these are basic needs. And if we don't have, those needs are not met, and they are not met by the person who's supposed to satisfy those needs, there is definitely going to be a conflict. There's going to be some amount of tension, some amount of problem between people where there are unmet needs. So conflicts happen when people are physically unwell, tired, hungry, and overstressed. They happen when people's basic needs for recognition, affection, and affiliation are not met in their team or work environment also. Perceptions. So when moment you look at this picture, what do you see? What did you see when you first looked at this picture?
A woman.
A woman. First, right? Yes, Preeti, your this thing is off, your volume. I mean, you've muted yourself. Okay, anyone else?
I've seen this before. So
You
I was
see
not
the
convinced.
face. So those of you who have seen it before, it's nothing new. But when you first look at it, immediately it looks like a woman. And then when you try and look at what the picture is, then you realize it's a whole lot of elements, animals coming together to, and then it looks like, it's put in a way that it looks like a woman. So that's perception. Again here, do you see what the other person sees? So some of you might have immediately seen what's in front, and some of you may have seen the shadow first. Our senses perceive differently depending on our unique background. Our perspective changes when we are in different situations. That when you're going to buy a house, a price of a particular amount in a particular locality may seem a lot for you, but when you're going to sell the same house, it may feel like you're not getting enough for it, because your role is changing, the situation is changing, and your perspective changes. Let's have a look at this video. When your angle changes, your view changes, how you see that object changes. That's just a visual representation, but that's also how we see things as humans in situations. Assumptions. Based on what we know, we make assumptions. Instead of checking out whether there is any truth in one's assumptions, people just assume and stick with the stand that they take. A person will stick to the stand that he has taken because there are assumptions. When assumptions are not discussed or checked for accuracy, they will cause conflicts. There is negligence in this case. It's an assumption. When you go into the details, was there not? That would depend on a lot of factors. Real and perceived. Yesterday, Dr. Kapoor spoke about it. Perceived negligence is where there is no real negligence. It's the perception of the person that makes them feel that there is negligence, because there are certain assumptions that are being made. Mediators should have the ability to avoid assumptions. The best way to do so is to ask the disputant themselves. And we will always be surprised that what we assume and what we think as logical or rational is not necessarily what others think. Accept, this is important for all of us, is to accept the diversity of the human mind. Don't assume, don't make judgments, and don't have an absolute view of anything. Particularly when you are dealing with conflicts, dealing with people, try to be open and understand different perspectives. It makes it easier for us to go through life and live, with a lot more joy and peace in our life if we don't get into absolutism. I think this is covered. Growing up differently. Conflicts can occur because we all grew up differently. This cause can include the results of growing up in a particular race, ethnic, or religious group, or because of our gender. Each generation views life and work differently. Each of these experiences gives us specific messages about how to deal with others and with conflicts. Yesterday we discussed, approach in terms of what we believe about conflict, and that eventually the outcome depends on our belief about conflict. The willingness and ability to deal with conflicts. An underlying cause that keeps people from resolving their conflicts is their willingness and ability to deal with conflict. We might not know how to deal with conflicts. Our ability is lacking, so we fumble around trying to solve them. On the other hand, we may know how to deal with conflicts, but are unwilling to do so. So there will be a lot of cases you will go through where people will take a position or say that this is what I want, and they will not move from it because they're just not willing to consider any other perspective. They're just not willing to resolve the conflict in any other way than what they want. So be prepared that people need to be willing to resolve the conflict, and they have to have the ability to deal with it. This is something that always keep in your mind. We call this the conflict iceberg. What you see of a conflict, how it's made out to be, what you know during the first meeting or when somebody approaches you, and with what it actually will be, will depend on a lot of things, and the issue will just be the tip of the iceberg. We are having a storm here, a cyclone. So a little bit of, we have a generator backup, so that's not a problem, but it takes a while for it to switch. So please don't mind my darkness.
Are you in Chennai?
I am in Vijayawada in Andhra Pradesh.
Oh, okay.
Yes. No. So basically, issues, and there could be multiple factors. All of these things that we just spoke about are part of this conflict iceberg. They're lying underneath. You won't see them in like moment you talk about the issue. The issue will be a set of facts, blame, anger, all that will be seen on the surface. But as you explore it, a lot of things will come up: personalities, emotions, interests, needs, desires, self-perception, self-esteem, hidden expectations, unresolved issues from the past. Some or all. It depends on the complexity of the issue that you will be exploring, and you will find a lot of facts that come up. Okay, so now I want you to share with me if you all have done the conflict survey.
Do we share it on WhatsApp?
No, so you can just put your, okay, if you want to, don't share it on WhatsApp.
No.
You can just put it here if you all want.
But the whole survey, how do we put it here?
Not the whole survey. So at the end of the survey, calculate is given. So if you can just say which one of those four is the one that you had the highest marks, the points in, and which you had the lowest, you can just put. Or if you had 2, you can put 2.
All right.
On the chat.
On the chat. So we have it here in front of us.
Ganda, I have a question. I haven't really understood how to have that final qualifying. So it says collaborative. What is 1, 5, 7?
You add up the 1, 5, and 7 questions.
You add up the questions 1, 5, 7.
And?
1 second. Let me go through that.
Should we put the number of points also?
No, it's just, I want you all actually to
Huh.
understand whether, how true it is for you.
Okay.
You feel that once we go through what it means, you can tell us, whether you feel you identify with it, it's correct, it's not correct. So remember one thing, first of all, each person doesn't have like a fixed style. But in certain situations, you choose a certain style depending on what you need in that situation. So that's what we're going to explain now. And understanding that, you will understand that why people do certain things in certain situations and what is the approach that they are taking.
So Ganda, for example, if collaborative has 157, whatever answer for 157, so 1, let's say it's 3, 5, let's say is 2, and 7, let's say is 4, then you
Yes.
add up 3 plus 2 plus 4. Is that
Yes.
how it is?
Yes. And those are the points you get for collaborative.
Okay, fine, got it.
Okay.
It's quite true, huh?
So most of you find that it resonates with the kind of personality that you have or your approach. So the survey was basically for you to have a little bit of awareness on whether you avoid confrontation, accommodate, compromise, compete, or collaborate. Let's little bit look at what that means. So if you in general, or in your strategy in general, is avoidance, you will avoid the conflict and you will deny or escape it. So you will not confront it. You prefer to keep the peace and not, ruffle the feathers, sort of. So if it can be avoided, you will avoid it. Now, this will change when the relationship or the issue is very important to you. You will not take this approach in every situation. Okay, so then it's not like a personality type, but it's a style that unless it's really important, you would rather avoid it. That's the approach. If you have an assertive approach, you will negotiate, mediate, arbitrate, or litigate. And if you choose negotiation and mediation, your focus is needs and interests. If you choose arbitration and litigation, your focus is rights. And aggression is a slightly on the extreme, where you will fight or wage war, and there your need, what you're trying to get is power, not really asserting rights or just needs and interests. You are looking at power. So where there's violence, you are looking at power. So this is the general understanding. Now let's look at responses to conflict. When we say that you compete, you impose or assert your decision onto another through your power in the equation. So it's very important to get things your way. That is competition. Being better than the other or getting what you want is compete. Avoiding is generally a short-term strategy. Conflict avoidance is expressed in denial, repression, suppression, and continuing postponement of facing the conflict. It is not that you avoid the conflict because you don't have power. Sometimes you avoid the conflict because you have power. Because you know that till you do something about it, the situation will not change. For example, you have a will that has been, there's a will of your parent who basically has given you a larger chunk of the property. And your sibling who wants to talk to you is unhappy with the will and wants to discuss it with you. Your approach is to avoid it, because engaging with that conflict is not going to help you. And perhaps the relationship with your sibling may not be as important to you as the property that you have inherited through that will. So it's not always that just because the power is less or more, or you are avoiding the conflict because you are, in a weaker position. Many times the interest why you're avoiding the conflict or avoiding confrontation or discussion or mediation or even taking any action on it is because you are in a position of power. Compromise. People who favor compromise believe that you must give a little in order to get a little. Compromising recognizes the importance of both goals and relationships, yet it is skeptical that either is enhanced through conflict. So where you value your relationship more than the matter at hand, you will compromise. Or where you are aware that you don't have the power, the negotiating power. By power here, I mean that something in the equation which gives you more power than the other in terms of the facts. Accommodate is a strategy when you give importance to your relationship with the other person at the expense of achieving your goals. This conflict response is most commonly seen with someone else with greater power. So you will generally accommodate a request within an organization that comes from a higher authority, or you will accommodate a request or a matter where, say, you have written a thesis and you have a guide and the guide has to support you. You will accommodate a lot more than you would accommodate with a junior colleague. So that's the relationship of power, because something else is more important to you than that matter itself. Collaborate is when you value your relationship, and you believe that conflict offers an opportunity to gain in both areas. Collaborating does take time, however, cannot be adopted as a quick fix strategy. Collaboration involves discussion, understanding both sides, and then coming up with a solution. It's not always something that happens quickly, particularly when conflict has already taken place. This is the Thomas Kilmann conflict graph, which basically explains how these strategies work. When you focus on others' needs and mutual relationships, when there's least focus, you will be either avoiding or competing. Least focus on the relationship. And it depends on your level of assertiveness. Focus on your needs, desired outcomes, and agenda. So if your focus on your needs and that of the other is the least, you will be avoiding. Also, the focus on the relationship, you will be avoiding. And where the relationships matter more than anything else to you, you will be accommodating. Where you are extremely assertive and your needs are most important to you, you will be competing. Or you may also be collaborating if the relationship also matters to you, the other relationship with the other person. And compromising is somewhere in the middle. And this chart kind of explains it even better. So on the vertical scale, it's concern for others, where it is low, and as the graph progresses, it's high. On the horizontal line, it is concern for oneself, where it is low, and high on the as it progresses. So where your concern for others is high, it is your way, you are accommodating. You win, I lose. So when you accommodate somebody, you basically say, let's have it your way. You can win, I will lose. When you collaborate, it is our way. So we both win. We find a way where we both win. Avoidance is there is no way. I don't care if I win or lose. Competition is my way. I win, you lose. Compromise is halfway. You win some, I win some. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I just wanted to ask, ma'am, I mean, it's written out of this, but is it really possible to stay neutral through something? Because as humans, we usually just make our own opinions the moment we come across a situation. Even if we hear both sides, we always tend to, at least in our mind, decide, okay, fine, this is right and this is wrong, or this is better or this is worse. So in a practical setting, are you able to stay neutral? And since you've done this for so many years?
It's hard, and it's harder in the beginning. With time, you tend to have an internal dialogue and understand, there's a dialogue you have with yourself. You always ask, and we are going to discuss that also during the course. You always ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I asking this question? What is my intention? Am I trying to understand the matter? Am I trying to go towards a solution? Am I siding? Like, am I being unfair, or am I being partial? So we tend to be extremely aware of where we are coming from as mediators, and I I don't think 100% neutrality is something that is possible, because you will carry some amount of your own experience with you, but we are always trying. So it's like it's as neutral as you can be. It's harder in the beginning. You tend to have some techniques that you can use as you progress. So that's what it is. In fact, we have an entire session that's only on neutrality, because it is, as Dr. Preeti said, one of the most difficult things to do. I mean, that's going to be your most difficult part, because it's not just staying neutral, it's also staying non-judgmental, because we do stay neutral and judgmental, because as arbitrators or as judges, we are expected to come to a conclusion. We are supposed to look at two sides and see who is right and wrong. Here we are supposed to stay neutral and non-judgmental. So that's hard. And it continues to be hard. Any other questions?
I think to understand, we will have to go through the again recording some part of it tomorrow.
Yes.
Then only we will be able to, because all this looks simple, but then it's there till the picture is there.
Yes.
When the picture is out, we forget.
Yes, that's true. Absolutely true. That's why we keep the recording on for a bit, and we also share the PPTs so that you can, you can get some idea, some reference point. But it is, as you said, and a lot of questions will keep coming up. This is just setting the stage. Each of these things are going to be taken up in detail through role plays, through through what do you call it, through examples and things, and hopefully there'll be more clarity as we go ahead.
So, ma'am, when you have two people who come and meet you for mediation, by the end of that first couple of discussions, you're able to figure out where they stand in this. I mean, from their response to their conflict, as in between the two parties, what exactly is. So it's easier for you to deal with it.
Sorry, I'm generally able to diffuse the tension that I can do within the first two, because actually to understand what's going on, first you need to do is diffuse the tension. So generally when people come, they are, arguing with each other, and they're either not talking to each other or arguing with each other. Basically there's a communication breakdown. So my job in the beginning is to establish that, so that they are able to express themselves to me and to each other. Many facts come to light in the beginning, but as we progress, more and more do. And what we just spoke about, the underlying causes take some time, and depends again on the complexity. Like Mr. Praveen said right in the beginning about the case that they met at Starbucks and they resolved it. Some cases can get resolved like that in one sitting, and there are others which take multiple sittings. So it all depends on how complex the matter is. That's the thing. But generally, diffusing the tension is possible in the first one or two sessions.
You said that you have to be very neutral, but
Hmm.
when there are two parties which are adamant, how do you diffuse the tension by pointing a midway, or what do you do exactly?
Okay, so that's a process. So we'll address that as we go ahead. There are basically one is to be heard. The tension keeps rising if you don't have a space to express yourself and to say what you want to say. So giving that space and giving it in such a manner that they are heard not just by you, by the other person. And then bringing the focus to the so there are okay, so that's really getting into the matter.
Yeah.
And if I say it now, then basically it's just going to be heavy. So let's take it one step at a time. And but yes, that's exactly what we are learning through the process. So while we are at it, we have a little bit of time. I'm going to give you all a small exercise. So I want two volunteers who would like to do the exercise. It's a very simple exercise. Who would like to volunteer among you all?
I can volunteer.
Okay. And one more person?
It should be done now only?
Yes, right now. It's very small. So Dr. Sirur and Rushali, I'm sending you all each a problem. And let's do it right here. Just read the problem. It will take a few minutes.
How are you sending it? WhatsApp?
No, here on the chat.
Okay.
So both Rushali and Dr. Sirur have got a problem. Rushali is participant 2 and Dr. Sirur is participant 1. And I am the shopkeeper and they've come to me to buy a bottle of water. I have only one bottle of water and both of them have to buy it from me. So whenever you are ready, let's see how you will ask me for that bottle of water.
Uh, I didn't get how do I ask this?
So unlike
Hi,
the shopkeeper, you have come to me, you have come to the
right,
store, and
right,
you see that there's only one bottle of water,
right.
and you ask me, I want to buy that bottle of water. So I'll tell you what it costs.
Yeah, hi. I need that water bottle. How much is it
10
for?
rupees. It's 10
Oh,
rupees.
give it to me. I want that.
Okay. So now by the time you're coming, immediately Roshali is also there at the store and she also wants the bottle of water. So Roshali,
Yeah, I also need a water bottle, please.
but I have only one. So whoever you all discuss among yourself, I have only one. I can give.
I am an urgent need actually. I have been running throughout the day and I'm totally tired and there's no source of water for me and I am dehydrating, and unless I have it right now, it will be a medical situation for me.
Oh
So
God.
that's
Why don't you always keep a water bottle? Otherwise, anyway, if that's the case, I'm really not very thirsty. But I always keep a water bottle in case I get thirsty. So I don't have a urgent need. So I think you can take the water bottle. I'll manage without the bottle for the time.
okay. That's very nice of you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, great. So now can you all identify what was the approach taken by Dr. Sirur? Accommodating. He was accommodating.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's look at another way where he refused to say, I came first. I mean, generally participants would be like, I came first to the store. I need the bottle. So I'm going to buy it because I reached first. So that humanity angle is not coming into the picture for a lot of people because they are competing. They don't care about the needs of the other person. They're actually competing. So when you do that, that's a competing approach. Others say, okay, you take half the water, I take half the water, and that's compromising because you also win some, I also win some. And then there is another approach, which is basically, avoiding. In this case, avoiding would really be nothing because you either buy it or you don't. So you either accommodate or you compete. And there's another approach because if you read your problem properly, what Dr. Sirur needs is the bottle. He's not really thirsty. Whereas what Roshali needs is the water. She's thirsty because she's been running. She's dehydrated. She's famished. And she would drink the water and she could give the bottle to Dr. Sirur, who could eventually go and fill it up somewhere because all he wants is to carry a bottle of water. So that is collaboration. As simplified, life is not so simple. Our problems that we face as mediators is never so simple, but to simplify a concept, that's the concept.
So
I want my bottle.
We have a lot of things, kind of problems where we basically explain this in this manner, just to bring in that little bit of participation and actually see it from that perspective. And particularly when you are with younger, like college participants, everybody wants to win. So they will really negotiate on this for a while and all of that. Of course, with doctors, it's a lot more accommodating and collaborating kind of approach. Yes,
because being a doctor and she said a medical emergency,
yes.
I didn't want to attend to that.
Yes.
Yeah, in fact, even I thought so that it's because of his medical background, he immediately agreed to it.
Yes.
So Gandha, I have a question. Now that, yes, we understood the different types of responses and the situational relevance of it, but as a mediator, how do we relate ourselves into these different situations?
It's basically for you to understand how people are approaching the issue, and to understand that this is, that's why I keep saying this point, that people are not accommodating or collaborating by nature. They're doing it because they perceive that situation in a particular manner. The more you explore it and the more you understand the reasons behind that situation and why they're behaving in a particular manner, it's possible to move them from there to a more collaborative approach. Our aim in mediation is, to the extent possible, to have a collaborative approach, or at least a compromising approach, and not be avoidant or be aggressive or competing. That's the approach that we don't want.
So accommodating and compromising doesn't work.
Compromising also works in some situations. For example, if it's a purely monetary matter, you are basically bargaining on a point. You have asked for 10 lakhs for a particular issue. I am willing to give you 2 lakhs. And then we are bargaining and there's nothing more to be done. So those kind of issues also come up. But we must first explore what is the reason and try and see if there is something more than what we see. And don't immediately jump, because there are times when you think of mediation, you think it's a thing that I will sit in the middle, I'll ask them, what is your offer, and come to the middle point and then agree. That is not what mediation is. So sometimes when you think of compromise, you think, okay, if one is claiming 2 lakhs and one is claiming 10 lakhs, let me come somewhere in the middle and let's have an agreement. In fact, as mediators, we don't give out those figures. We never, that's something that doesn't even cross our mind, that we could actually come to the middle and come to a solution. We always look at what's the problem. So that thing about compromising is last. So like dividing the water half and half is the last thing on our mind. We'll keep on explaining, why do you need it? What is it that you want? How will it make it, how is it going to solve your problem? What is your problem?
Ganda, you said compromise and accommodate are the situation where we need to move the parties, direct their thought process towards these.
Yes, because Rushali,
collaborative. Why not collaborate?
We are moving towards collaboration. When parties come to the table, they are not in a collaborative space. They are not approaching. They are generally coming with a position where they are saying, this is what I want. And I'm okay to up to here. So they're looking at compromise, accommodate a little bit. But they are very clear that this is what I want. So depending on how they perceive their case in terms of their negotiation power, they are more adamant on that issue. But as you proceed, you start seeing things differently, and then you move from competing to compromise. Eventually, you move towards collaboration. And that, of course, I'm generalizing and simplifying. It's not so simple. It depends on the facts of the case, a lot of factors, and we'll see that. This is just for you to understand the concepts and what we are looking for. That's it. Somebody is speaking. Somebody wanted to say something.
What's the difference between compromising and accommodating? They're quite similar, right?
Accommodating is when you don't think about yourself at all. Compromising is somewhere in between, that you give some and you get some. Accommodating is when you give up on your rights. So, in fact, what Dr. Sirur did was accommodating. He just said, you take it. if he was a little compromising, he would have said, okay, you want water, you have half of the water and half of the hot water I will have, and you pay 5 rupees, I will pay 5 rupees. We've had so many situations in this case. There are people who say, oh, it's just 10 rupees, I'll give you 20, I want the water. And then they keep going higher and higher and saying that I'll pay 50, I'll pay 100. So that also happens. So
That would be what then? That would be
competing, no? When you
competing.
want it at all costs.
Okay.
I have money power, I will use it and I will win.
But under that the illustration, his bottle was broken, so he had to drink from the same bottle. So either he takes the entire bottle or he gives away the bottle to the other party. So
Yes.
I
I
think
mean, that you're assuming that you're going to basically drink it in such a way that you will contaminate it. You can always
And,
drink it Indian style, upar se, and you'll be
but
fine.
that person was not thirsty in the first place, so it was
Yes.
not required. So actually, it was not giving up. See, if the point was that I'm thirsty, and then I would not have given up. Then I
Correct.
would see. Then that would have been accommodation. Otherwise, actually, this is a compromise. Like because I don't need it, so I'm not going to insist on it. That was the approach.
Okay, so your understanding of the fact is that you don't need the bottle. So
I'm not thirsty. I
you're
just
not
think
thirsty, but you need the bottle, Dr. Singh. It's very clear that you may get thirsty. It's a long hike that you're doing. You may get thirsty, and you don't. You have the bottle in which you fill up water and drink. So you go to somebody's house, or you have a place where water is available for free. You can fill it up. Now that bottle is broken, so there's no way you can drink water. So you have to prepare. When you are on a hike, you have to prepare for your road ahead.
no. That's the end of the hike. That was the fact of that case.
Okay.
That you're coming to the station.
So basically, you're saying that you are not being accommodated. You are being compromised. You are compromising. You're
No,
saying
actually,
the person's need is more than mine, so it's fine. I don't need it so bad.
correct.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would not have given up my rights so easily.
We perceived it that you were extremely kind and you valued the life. And I don't think it's the relationship. I think it's the life and the health of the individual.
Yeah. Her need was more than mine, so that is why I compromised.
Yes, I'm just giving you examples in terms of how, we've seen lots of examples. We've seen bribery, we've seen competition at another level. So it depends on the group and the level of competence, competition that people have, to do, and age groups. So a lot of this, but it's a lovely example to explain that graph in terms of seeing it from a practical illustration. Yes, so it's 9:30 and we are done for the day.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.